Wondering what's happening in Iowa? Curious what you've missed on your favorite show? Searching for an escape into an uplifting piece of classical music or an up-and-coming band? Find it in the Iowa Public Radio app. Our latest stories, national news, live radio, Iowa culture, podcasts, it's everything IPR, wherever you are. Search IPR in the Apple or Android App Store, or download it now at ipr.org/app.
This is Garden Variety, a horticulture podcast from Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm Charity Nebbe. Tulips and daffodils are reliable, easy to plant, and beautiful. And when it comes to spring blooming bulbs, they're just the beginning of the story. Today, we're going to cover bulb basics and go beyond to talk about some of the other bulbs you might want to consider planting this fall. With me, Cindy Haynes, professor of horticulture at Iowa State University. Hello, Cindy.
Good morning.
And Erin Stile, Iowa State University Extension horticulture specialist. Hello, Erin.
Good morning.
And all right, it is October. We are definitely in the zone for planting bulbs that will bloom next spring. Cindy, what's our window?
Generally, anytime before the ground freezes. October's a nice time because the soil's still warm and the temperatures are getting cooler. So the month of October is like prime bulb planting time because the roots might grow just a little bit and the bulbs will get settled in. Maybe they get a little bit of water, so they perform really well in the spring. But you and I both know that we will still plant them sometimes in November and even on Thanksgiving week, right?
Or maybe just the day that the snow is in the forecast for the first time and you're like, oh, shoot,
I got to get this done.
Yeah.
I got to get this done. Yes, and that's fine. It's still fine to plant them before the ground freezes. Once it freezes, you're toast on planting them in the ground. And the bulbs might be toast, too, if you don't do something with them.
Right. They're not going to save for next year.
They're not saving for next year.
All right. So when I go out, let's start with tulips and daffodils. And, when I go out, let's just start with tulips. When I go out to plant my tulips, what are best practices?
So really, the first thing that's on my list when I'm planting is like finding a good location. So most spring bulbs do really well kind of interplanted with other, in particular, perennials because that foliage sticks around a lot longer than the flowers, and the flowers come up a lot sooner than the perennials do. So if we do a good job of intermixing them with perennials, especially those that cover a lot of ground but maybe come up a little bit later, like hostas and ornamental grasses and daylilies and those types of plants, we can mask that foliage and enjoy the flowers when they come up and then not have to look at that foliage for the rest of the season. This often means they end up kind of in the middle or back of the border even instead of towards the front. That will also help with that. The other thing I'm really careful to do is to make sure that I'm planting in patches, in drifts, in clumps. Soldier rows of bulbs never look as nice, and spreading them way far apart does not mean that the color is more expansive. It just means it's polka dotted. So kind of clumping them together, larger bulbs like tulips and daffodils, I'll put in at least a clump of 5. A clump of 10 would look better. And so that's kind of the first things I'm doing is finding that good spot. Well-drained soil is important for nearly every bulb. And so if it's a place that gathers water or water sits for any period of time, that's not the place for a bulb except for maybe Camassia.
Right.
So otherwise, they need to be somewhere else. And I'm going to dig a hole. I'm going to put it, the larger bulbs, I'll put 4 to 6 inches down. The smaller ones are going to be a little bit shallower, pointy side up, and fill the hole back in.
All right. And how far apart? I mean, you're planting them in a clump, but how far apart do they need to be from each other?
Yeah, the larger bulbs can be, anywhere from 3, maybe 5 inches, but 3 to 4 inches is kind of where I'm at with the larger bulbs, and the smaller ones will be a little bit closer together so that you can kind of get that kind of clump look when they come up.
All right, and when you say dig a hole, I think, Cindy, you've referred to this as the grave method, where you're kind of digging a rectangular hole.
Yeah, sometimes you are just kind of digging. Well, if you wanted to make it look natural. So it's not a solid grave, but you're digging a big area. Maybe it should be more apostrophe method, right?
Okay.
And then
kidney bean method,
yeah. Something like that. So
a
it's
fancy
not straight.
Pool, right?
Exactly. So that way, and you make it look like it's kind of tapering off in one end or the other, and then you pile it back on top, and sometimes I'll even put mulch on top of that so I know where it is. So it is a little bit mounded, but it's with a little bit of mulch. But then I know, like I said, I know where the bulbs are going to come up, so I'm not disturbing that later in the fall when I buy more plants. To plant other things in my garden.
So squirrels are also going to know where the bulbs are, and that can be problematic. Do you do anything to protect your bulbs from squirrels?
So they do definitely like certain bulbs more than others.
Crocus.
So things like crocus, and to a lesser extent tulips, but only because they're bigger. But tulips are pretty popular too. Chipmunks and squirrels are naturally attracted to areas that have been recently disturbed to begin with. And then they find this little pocket of deliciousness in there.
It's a little prize inside.
Yeah, and so they can be problematic. So if you do have a lot of issues with chipmunks, squirrels, and those kind of critters digging up, the easiest way to get around this is to simply lay a piece of hardware cloth, chicken wire fencing on the ground over the spot where you planted these things. Pin it down maybe with a couple landscape staples, and then just put a note on your calendar to pull it up first thing in the spring, just as the little green is showing, so that the plants don't actually end up growing through it. And then often you can pick it up and put a little rebar in it and create a cage around it to keep the rabbits off of it in the spring.
Perfect. And all right, you were talking about tulips and daffodils. They grow kind of in a different way. Do you have any recommendations, tulips versus daffodils?
Well, daffodils in general bloom earlier than tulips. And so they're actually nice partners that way, because you can get the earlier blooming daffodils and the slightly later blooming tulips. Both of them are kind of diverse enough genera that you can get a wide variety of bloom just with good cultivar selection too, in particular tulips. There's tulips that will bloom weeks ahead of other varieties of tulips. And so if you do a good job of selecting different types, some of them have names that make it really easy, like early blooming and late blooming. And those are actually classifications of tulips. So making sure that you select from cultivars from each of those little categories can really help get a nice long bloom period. And you can do that with both tulips and daffodils.
Right. But from the longevity piece, daffodils generally last longer in the landscape. They have the tendency to make bigger clumps that you might need to divide. They're going to be there, when your house isn't there. It could be 50 years from
It'll be the
whatever.
daffodils and the peonies and nothing else.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So the tulips aren't going to be as long lasting. But I like the adding different colors. Just know that with planting tulips and daffodils, you're going to have to replant the tulips a little more often. And that's a great opportunity for you to change colors, change tulip styles, change bloom times, or find your favorites. The daffodils
I will say my tulips are just sort of a hodgepodge, because I keep planting more tulips in the same location, and I don't dig up the old bulbs. And so some of the old bulbs come up, and I've got new ones. I do not mind this at all. It's it's a variety pack for sure. But if you're somebody who's looking for uniformity, like the kinds of professional displays of tulips that we see, you pretty much have to dig up your old bulbs and plant new, every year?
Those big displays that you see in public gardens, in municipal parks and stuff that have really nice kind of solid carpets of tulips, those are treated as annuals. They're planted new every year. And so they're pulled out when they're finished blooming, and usually annuals go in their place for the rest of the season. And then this time of year, they're planting new ones for next spring. In the home garden, you may be able to get 2 years out of tulips, maybe 3, depending on the variety. And there are some tulips that are more long-lived than that. But the traditional kind of, if you drew a tulip, you had a kindergartner draw a tulip, that tulip tends to be 2-3 years in the garden before it really starts to kind of peter out. And then that would be the point where you might decide, you know what, after this year, I'm going to get new ones this fall. So I'm going to pull them out when they're done blooming this year so that I don't have kind of those random lingering bulbs.
But that's a nice surprise.
It is. I love them.
So when you add these
Yeah.
different colors, like, oh, this one came back from last year.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of nice.
So we have just a couple of minutes left. What are some of the other bulbs that you guys really love and maybe we should consider planting this fall? Cindy, you want to go first?
Sure. Ornamental onions are one of my favorites just because they're these big round dots, these balls that appear. And I can get little ones, I can get tall ones, I can get big ones. And I like purple and white. So there's lots of options.
And they
on
kind
those.
of look like Dr. Seuss plants to me.
Yeah,
They're cool.
They attract some attention. And when they're done, they kind of dry well, too. So those flowers dry well. The one thing I will say with the ornamental onions is sometimes when they're blooming, their foliage isn't as nice. So make sure you have other things kind of in front of them to kind of cover up the foliage.
Yeah.
So ornamental onions, I would say try those.
I like a lot of the little guys. And so this is like the snowdrops, the grape hyacinth, the crocus, the striped squill, pushkinia,
I love
super
pushkinia.
cute. I do really enjoy those. There's one in particular that is a lot of fun. You don't see it as often, but it's the checkered lily,
Oh, nice.
sometimes called guinea hen, but it literally has a checkerboard pattern on the petals, and it's purple and dark purple. Kind of those are the colors that are just really fun. It's a type of fritillaria, and there's another type of fritillaria that's hard for us to grow long term in Iowa, but it is the coolest looking flower.
Crown Imperial.
Crowned Imperial, yes. This is one you definitely want to put in the back of the border, though, because it has a very skunky smell. So you want to appreciate the flowers from afar.
But nothing bothers it. So
Nice.
Because
those-
it's a skunky
yes,
smell.
yes, nothing will eat it. And then we also have to mention surprise lilies or magic lilies, because they bloom at a totally different time and they're weird and cool. All
They
at
are.
the same
They look like they appear out of nowhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun to surprise a gardener by planting surprise lilies. Yes.
So this is like guerrilla gardening that you're recommending,
Yes.
surprising other gardeners by planting surprise lilies.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't think there would be a single gardener who wouldn't appreciate it. So.
Good plan. Good plan. Cindy Haynes, professor of horticulture at Iowa State University, and Aaron Stile, Iowa State University Extension horticulture specialist. For more gardening information and tips, please subscribe to our garden variety newsletter. Find out more at iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. Garden Variety is a production of Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension. It's produced by me, Aaron Stile, Caitlin Troutman, and the Iowa Public Radio talk show team. For more garden goodness, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Just go to iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time.